welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Amy.
And I'm Kelly.
And today we are here to talk about our May reading wrap-ups. So May, one of the longest months of the year. As I was telling you earlier, also happened to be my saddest reading month of the year so far.
But it's a busy month too.
It was so
Crazy.
busy. And I don't think June's gonna be any better by the looks of it right now. But
Yeah.
So
I told Amy earlier, I'm on bare minimum right now. So the bare minimum of everything getting done. Hair, makeup, housekeeping, bare minimum.
yeah, and I definitely second that. Like, if you saw my house right now, it's bad. It's bad.
I did see your new video though. Your office looks good.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. But we are here to talk about our reading stats.
Yeah, you know, tangents are our thing, so
Yes.
it wouldn't be a video of ours without them.
Yes.
So I only read 2 books this month, and they both happen to be books that we read for our book club. So we had Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna and Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. So Firefly Lane was probably the book that I was most excited to read this month and ended up being a bit of a disappointment. I still ended up giving it 3 stars because the writing was really good.
I did too.
I just didn't enjoy the story as much as I loved the TV show. So.
And you can see everything about our rants and our praises on a video 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Because we skipped last week. Yeah. We skipped last week.
We did. It was just too busy. We were just too busy.
We couldn't do it.
No.
Sorry.
We're only human.
Bare minimum.
Exactly. But yeah, so you can go check out all of the things there, so I'm not going to talk in depth about that one at all this video. And Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. I gave 4 stars to, again, just because of the writing. I think that the author did a really good job of writing Eleanor and all of her quirks and things about her, and so I gave it 4 stars for that, not necessarily because I love the story so much, but just mainly because of the writing. So that gave me an average rating for the month of May, 3.5 stars. So, you know, not a bad month.
Did it hurt your brain to figure that out?
It did. It did a little bit, I'm not even gonna lie. So
The math was hard.
The math was so hard. Next book stat I have is the amount of pages that I read. Both of these books were a little bit on the longer side. I think Eleanor Oliphant came in at almost 400 pages and Firefly Lane was almost 500 pages, so they were a little bit longer. The total for the month for me was 869 pages for an average of about 435.
Firefly Lane was a little longer than I thought it would be.
It was a lot longer than I was expecting it to be.
I was not thinking it would be. But
no, I don't know. I honestly thought that this was a series, a book series. But they covered like the entire 2 seasons of the TV show was in this book. So I was
But there
confused.
is another book.
There is. Do I think I will read it? Probably not. No, probably not.
Wait and see if Netflix does the show.
No, they're not.
They're not? Really?
Yeah, they said that they're not.
Wow. No, well.
We'll see.
No. I read 6 books this month. So I read also, I'll just use Amy's book, Firefly Lane. And I read another book that I read on my Kindle that I don't have a copy of, which is The Butcher and the Wren.
You read Elena's book!
I read Elena's book. So I'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Then I read The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson.
I'm excited to hear you talk about that one too.
I read The London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. Way too many S's in that. Wayward by Amelia Hart. This was a total cover buy. Look at that. And I read Lone Women by Victor Lavelle. So my total pages were 2,179 for an average of 363 pages. Yeah, okay, so I gave Firefly Lane also 3 stars. Same reason. And no need to discuss that. Lone Women, 4 stars. Wayward, 3 stars. The London Seance Society, 3 stars. And The Devil in the White City, 3 stars.
Oh.
Which isn't, I'll talk about it. It's fine.
What about The Butcher and the Wren?
Oh, The Butcher and the Wren, 3 stars.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. I'll talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, so basically, I mean, it brings my average to 3 stars. I mean, there was that 4-star in there, but it didn't bring up the average enough to worry about. So it was pretty much 3 stars. The Butcher and the Wren was the shortest book I read at 256 pages, and Firefly Lane was the longest. The edition I read was 502 pages.
All right, so for genres, as far as books go for me this month, I had 2 general fiction, I guess is what I'm going to classify these as. I really don't know what else to call them, so we're just going to make it easy and say general fiction, so yeah.
There you go.
It's kind of odd that I have a month that I don't have at least like 1 thriller or something in it, because I feel like I've been doing pretty good at keeping up with my favorite genre.
There you go.
I'm in the middle of one right now, so.
Me, I also thought I was going to finish another book, but it didn't happen, so. Yeah. I read basically no fantasy this month. The one I'm halfway through right now is, but yeah. So nonfiction, The Devil in the White City, and The Butcher and the Wren, horror thriller. I classified Firefly Lane as women's fic.
Yeah.
Contemporary women's fiction. Okay, so then that leaves me with these 3. And I am basically just calling them general fiction because I honestly don't know how to classify them. Each one of them is historical, but it's not really historical fiction. Each one of them has supernatural elements, but not so much that I would call it magical realism. It doesn't have the same feel to me as magical realism does. Amazon, well, they're classified in mystery and horror, all 3 of them, which I don't really agree with either, having read them. I mean, maybe the London Seance Society has some mystery in it. I mean, Lone Women has some mystery in it too, but it's not a mystery book, you know? I don't know. I'm just saying they're fiction because I don't know where to put them. So, yeah, maybe after I talk about them, y'all can tell me where I should put them. But that's what I'm doing because I don't want to think about it. Bare minimum right now. I'm too tired to think about it.
Perfect. All right, and then our final book stat before we move into talking about books, well, before Kelly moves in talking about her books, is authors. So both of the authors that I read from this last month were new to me authors. Kristen Hanna is one that I'm going to be reading from again, mainly because it's one of our book club book choices.
In December.
Had it not been one of our book club book choices, well, you know what, no, because I liked her writing.
Yeah.
So I probably would have read from her again anyway.
And I think I'm always reading the acknowledgments and reviews and stuff, and it seems like Firefly Lane is kind of not her usual subject matter.
Okay.
So I'm thinking maybe I might like something else from her.
Yeah.
So.
And I know that The Four Winds had like a lot of great reviews.
Yeah. And it's historical,
but, you know,
so.
Yeah.
I might like
might
that
be
better. I don't know. We're gonna find out.
We'll find out. Yeah. And then Gail Honeyman, I would probably read from her again as well, because I did enjoy her writing. I don't know what else she's written though. If she had any other books or not.
I don't know. I didn't look it up.
I don't know. Yeah, they were both really good authors, so I'm okay with trying them out again, I guess. I'm not going to completely discount them yet.
There you go.
Yeah.
Some catches your eye. Yeah. Okay, so my authors were all 6 new to me, and no repeats. All 6 were different. Eric Larson, I mean, probably so. I mean, I'll talk about why I only gave it 3 stars. It's not really a bad rating. It's more me, it's not you. Sarah Penner, I didn't necessarily enjoy this book as much, but I've heard that her other book, The Last Apothecary, is really good, so I will probably try that out. Amelia Hart, I don't know. I don't know that she has anything else. I think this might have been her debut, but I don't know for sure. Depends on the book, and I'll tell you why. Victor Lavelle, yeah, I mean, I might. If I saw something of his that caught my eye. I know he has several books out. Nothing that's too interesting, but I mean, he's a good writer, so I probably would. Elena Urquhart, who wrote Butcher and the Wren. Yeah, probably, because there's a sequel. She's writing a sequel to The Butcher and the Wren, and yeah, I'll probably read it. And Kristen Hanna, yeah, I mean, like Amy, we're gonna read her again.
Yeah.
So
whether we really want to or not, we're gonna read.
We're gonna do it.
Again, so.
We're gonna do it. So yeah.
Yeah.
I probably would. It's just kind of I think Sarah Penner is the only one I will probably go actively look out for another book. The others, it's more like if something crosses my path and it looks interesting, I'm not gonna go looking for it. Okay, so I'll start with the one nonfiction, The Devil in the White City. It is historical nonfiction about late 1800s, Chicago's World Fair, and H.H. Holmes, who was sometimes considered America's first serial killer, and definitely probably its most prolific serial killer.
And my
Amy's favorite serial killer. So yeah, it's kind of alternates between the two because the two aren't really connected. The two things aren't really connected. It's just that H.H. Holmes was operating in Chicago at the same time as the World's Fair. So it really just kind of alternates. So it was kind of like I found both of them interesting, but yet as a book together, it just didn't really go for me.
Yeah.
And they're so... I think the author took some liberties because there's really not a lot of factual stuff known about H.H. Holmes. And I think he made a few jumps.
Mm-hmm.
And in some places it was really dramatized. You know, like there's no possible way you could know what a conversation between two people were.
Right.
And yet there was plenty of conversations between characters in these books.
Yeah.
Having said that, I did find it very interesting. I think that time period is really interesting. And the way they put that World's Fair together was amazing. I mean, wow. That was incredible. For the time frame that these architects had to work in, because the politicians couldn't get their shit together.
What else is new? And
the things that they pulled off, and you know, the men that were involved in that, it was so interesting. And on the serial killer aspect, yeah, I mean, that was pretty interesting to, you know, read about Holmes and his murder castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, just the stuff that he did, it was just insane. And how much of a manipulating game player he was. I mean, right up to the end, in his cell, on death row, and he's still playing games with people. It's just crazy.
I'm over here sitting like I'm a proud parent right now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
and
that's my boy.
Well, and after kind of, you know, he fled Chicago, and he was pretty much basically on the run, and he was still like, he was on the run with kids and two different women, and he was juggling. They didn't know about each other. It was insane.
Yeah.
And he just would like marry people, and then he was already married to a woman that lived back east,
mm-hmm.
and he left her, but they were still married, never divorced her. Then he got married to another woman, and basically she lived in a house near her parents, and he just didn't live with her. And then he would just like take all of these women as lovers, and then he would marry him and then kill him. I mean, it was just nuts. It was just nuts.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, it was very interesting. It just, the book it just didn't quite go for me.
I think it would have benefited for being 2 separate stories.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but each on their own was interesting. Okay, so the one I don't have, The Butcher and the Wren. So Elena Urquhart is the co-host of Morbid Podcast, if you don't know.
Amazing podcast that you need to check out.
Amazing podcast, and I love it. So when she came out with her book, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll read that. So it's a thriller, horror, murder mystery about Jamie, right? Yeah, Jamie, who is a serial killer. And it alternates, and so part of the viewpoint is from Jamie. And Wren, who is she's not the coroner, medical examiner. She's the medical examiner, and it's set in New Orleans. And so, yeah, so it's just this kind of like Wren has to go to the crime scenes of Jamie, the serial killer, and so it's a little bit of a cat and mouse kind of thing, you know, crime procedural sort of thing. And so it's interesting. It's a fun read. I mean, if you don't want anything deep, if you just want like an airplane read or a beach read, you know, if you don't mind serial killers as your beach reads.
Oh, I mean, that sounds perfect to me.
It's a light read. I will say that. Because it doesn't really get into the characters aren't really developed. Like, it doesn't dive too deep into character development. And so you just kind of have to roll with it, that, you know, you fill in the gaps.
Gotcha.
You know, like Wren is part of the, you know, the police on the side of the law. So you kind of fill in the gaps of what kind of person she is, and, you know, and there's some things. Now, so it's okay. But there's about halfway through, there's a twist that I think is not misplaced, not handled very well. It came out of the blue for me. And I think that was intentional on her part, because it was supposed to be an aha kind of thing. But yet, it made no sense that what it was about, I'm not going to spoil anything, what it was not foreshadowed in any way at all. And what it was should have had some effect on Wren as a person.
Okay.
And that was never. And so after that point, it was like, then, everything was so clear, and Wren was like on the case, and it just flew off. So, I mean, yeah, you can buy into it having happened. Before that, it's a bit confusing because, well, I will say this. It's not really a spoiler. I mean, it happens soon enough in the book that I don't think it's a spoiler. But prior to the twist, the first twist, it's told in 2 separate viewpoints, Jamie's and Wren's. But what you don't realize is that Jamie's viewpoint is in the past and Wren's is in the future, or in the present. And then the twist happens, and then you're like, oh. But the problem is that after that, I could not get my brain to settle, because it just wasn't. I don't know. I still confuses me. I still have to stop and go, oh, no. Yeah, that happened. That's okay that happened, because that was past. It's just hard to keep track of things after that. So that kind of dulled my...
Gotcha.
And I think it was kind of whenever you have a twist that comes out of the blue like that, it kind of just feels like cheap shock value to me. Like the work wasn't put in to make it seem real.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. And then there's just other things, like Jamie leaves his kills, leaves the bodies in various places with clues, and so they can find, if they get the clues, then they can find the next drop, and maybe they can catch him. You know, it's like I said, it's kind of a cat and mouse thing.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the places that they are led to is this music festival, and the body is hidden But yet, just almost as soon as Ren and the police enter this, she can smell there's something off, And people, as they're walking, people are commenting about, well, because they're eating and stuff, and something smells bad. But yet they walk over there, and there's a security guard sitting, because the place where the body was someplace the public wasn't supposed to go, so there's a security guard sitting there. Apparently didn't smell anything. So it's kind of like details like that throughout that just kind of. But you don't think about too hard. Just go with it. It is entertaining. And so, yeah, I would read the sequel that she's writing now. So, yep. Okay, so The London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. Again, way too many S's. So this is also a dual viewpoint story. Lena's sister was murdered. And nobody knows, there's no clues, it's an unsolved mystery. And so in order to try and help figure out, her sister was really into the supernatural and seances and things like that. And she was studying with Vaudeline, who is a medium, and her Lena's sister Evie was studying with Vaudeline to learn how to do seances and things like that. So Lena is kind of a skeptic, but she knew her sister was studying with this medium, and so she thought that maybe she would get Vaudeline to do a seance to raise Evie's spirit to find out who killed her. But Vaudeline lives in Paris. She won't return to London because she had fled London because of threats on her life, and she won't return. So Lena goes to Paris, and because Vaudeline knew Evie, and so she took Lena on as a student and was going to teach Lena how to do seances so that Lena could go back to London and do a seance for Evie. Okay, so the other viewpoint is from Mr. Morley. Mr. Morley, who is part of the Gentlemen's Club, the London Seance Society. And as it starts out, there is a clear indication that something is corrupt within the Seance Society. And Mr. Morley's boss, Mr. Volkman, has basically said, clean this up. Figure out what's going on and clean this up. And so it starts talking about things like what's going to be wrong and things like that. But Mr. Volkman is killed. So Mr. Morley writes to Vaudeline and basically begs her to come back because she was friends with Mr. Volkman. Begs her to come back to London. He will, hide her. He will provide her protection. She can do the seance and leave. So she does. And Lena goes with her. And Vaudeline basically says, since I'm going to be in London anyway, I will do the seance for Evie as well while we're here. So there is the mystery about Mr. Volkman, there's the mystery about Evie, and there is the mystery about what's bad in the London Seance Society. And so when Vaudeline and Lena arrive in London, they're basically kind of thrown into this. And pretty much Vaudeline had been hearing rumors about corruption within the society, and in kind of sticking her nose in where it didn't belong, that's why she was getting threats on her life and was advised by Mr. Volkman to leave the country. So all of that starts to kind of play out, and of course you see them sneaking around in the clubhouse, basically, trying to figure out things. And Lena discovers that her sister had been disguising herself as a boy and sneaking into the Seance Society clubhouse to attend lectures and learn different things. So I'm not going to spoil anything from further, but there's some twists and turns, and not everybody's quite who you think they are, and then sometimes you think that you didn't know who they were, but then it turns back around and you did know who they were. And So it kind of, you know, your usual twisty, turny thriller. Lena doesn't know who to trust and what to do, and she just wants to know who killed her sister. And you know, this, as the story plays out, all of these mysteries interconnect, and then it comes to a head. So, I mean, it's okay. It's good. It was good for what it was. Some of the twists and turns, again, like The Butcher and the Wren, you just can't think about them too hard because some of them just kind of come out of the blue. And some of the reveals are just boring. Yeah. So, there was that. Now the end, when you find out, you know, how this all went down, was pretty good. Was pretty good. Why, I don't know how to classify this. It's obviously historical, but yet it's not historical in the sense that you really live in this time period. You know, there's a lot of modern sentiments in this book. So you don't really get that. I mean, obviously you get the time period because this is a gentleman's only club kind of thing. But yet you have women sneaking around all over the place. So I don't know. There is romance in this book, much more so than I was expecting. Which, again, came a bit out of the blue to me. I'm not sure I bought into the romance aspect of this. So there was that. And I don't know. I don't know. Some of it was just kind of boring, honestly. And there's only 2 seances in the book.
Oh.
And one of them is not very exciting. But the last one, really, that was good. The second one was good. So it's kind of one of those give and take kind of things. It's a good afternoon when you got nothing else to do. It's not a bad book. It's just, yeah, it's not great. But it's fairly well written, and the plotting is just not the best sometimes. But anyway, that's why I gave it 3 stars. And that's why I don't know how to classify this. I mean, maybe it is a murder mystery book. Maybe it's a supernatural murder mystery book. But yet, I don't know. There's kind of supernatural elements through the whole thing, but then kind of not. I don't know. But you know what the best part about this book was, honestly? In the back, there was a whole section here on Victorian mourning customs.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
And
talk about how they used to keep their family members like in their house.
mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah. And Victorian funeral feasting. So like foods that they would have. And a lot of this book discussed ways to fake a seance. Because that was kind of some of the charges that were being laid against the Seance Society. And so she's got some ways about how to do the trick things. Like there's a trick candle that they use, which is kind of cool. And then she does have like a listing of further reading if you're interested in that kind of thing. Yes. Honestly, that was the most interesting part of the book for me. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess really the bulk of this book was like I said, faking seances and how people were faking seances, and that was kind of cool. So I don't know. Yeah, anyway, some cool stuff, some not so cool stuff. Okay, Wayward by Amelia Hart. Again, this was a pure cover buy. It is so pretty, and the book just didn't live up to it. So Wayward is okay. It's the story of 3 different women in 3 different timelines, but they're all from the same family, the Wayward women. The first one is 16 something or other. One of them, 1619, and her name is Alpha, and she is on trial for witchcraft. And there's another one of 1942, which is Violet, and that's a weird one. But Violet is the only daughter of, she has 1 brother, so there's 2 children in this family, and her father keeps her absolutely completely isolated on their family estate. Like, she doesn't ever get to go anywhere, and it's just strange, very strange. But it just talks, her part is kind of a coming of age story, and then not so great things happen to her, and she ends up finding out about her mother's family, which her father kept from her, because her mother died when she was young, and her father kept all of it from her. So it's kind of that, and it's a little, like I said, it's a little iffy on that one. And the last one is set in 2019, which is Kate. And Kate is in an abusive relationship that she runs away from, she gets out of, and she runs to the Wayward Cottage. And so the Wayward Cottage is where Alpha had lived. It's where Violet's mother had lived, and then Violet goes back to, and then the cottage is actually left to Kate by Violet, because Violet is Kate's aunt.
Okay.
So her brother Graham, I think was his name, was Kate's grandpa. So anyway, they're all connected, like I said, through family. So this is very much a kind of feminist book, or at least it tries to be. Because, you know, Alpha, again, yes, she was a witch. Which is another reason why I don't know how to classify this. Because it does talk about it being historical, it talks about it being women's fiction, and yet it does have, I mean, they are witches. There is magic in this book. So, I don't know. Anyway, Alpha is a witch. She is on trial for witchcraft, being accused of using witchcraft to kill this guy. So it kind of goes through the trial and, you know, gives you the usual things that you kind of expect in a witchcraft trial. So it's nothing new there, but it is kind of interesting to read about. It's interesting to read about the things that Alpha does to get out of it. So that's kind of neat. And then again, you have Violet. Her story is just weird. It really just is. Again, she's a young girl. She's 16 years old, and her mother has died. Her father keeps her isolated and will not talk anything about her mother's side of the family. It's like she doesn't even have another family. It's just him in this manner. And so it talks about, you know, her life there, and then this distant cousin comes in. He's on leave from the war, and bad things happen, and how that all plays out. And then Kate, who is in an abusive relationship, and she basically, as you know, time has gone by, she's getting out. She's tried to leave a few times and it hasn't ended up well for her. So now she's getting sneaky. She's stashing cash. She inherited this cottage, so she's got a place to go, and she pretty much just runs away. And so she's hiding out at this cottage, kind of how that goes. And she finds out she really didn't have any idea about the wayward women either. So in the course of exploring the cottage and things like that, there's some things you just have to let go and go with it. Like supposedly a manuscript that Alpha wrote in 1619 that Kate is now reading in 2019. But you know what? Just go with it, because whatever. That's not what bothered me the most about this book. The three storylines were fairly predictable, except I would say for the way that Violet's ended. In this story, her 16-year-old self, because towards the end there's an adult self of Violet that it was weird. Her dad was so weird. I mean, ew. So that was kind of not predictable, but the others were. And so you could kind of see, you know, where things were going at this point. What bothered me the most about this book is that every single man in this book was shit. I mean, it was obviously a book about women fighting against, you know, society and their place in society, and trying to make their way as women who didn't follow the norm. And that's fine. But like literally every man they were in contact with was crap. With the exception of Violet's brother Graham. That was the lone exception in this. So that's kind of what bothered me the most, because I'm like, there's just no nuance to that. Women are cool, men are shit. That was like the point here. So, you know, I can get on board with a feminist kind of story, but you just can't do that. And by the way, these women were not good women. They were not.
So it wasn't even like a good feminist story anyway, because...
Well, I mean, it was because, you know, how these women had to fight for their place, and how each of them eventually did come to a place where they were happy with where they were. They, you know, kind of got what they wanted, in a sense. But not every single person in the... It doesn't have... I don't know. I just didn't appreciate that at all. And yeah, they were not good people. Like, really, they were not good people. I think the book tried really hard to make you think they were good people. They were not good people. They were not. And the epilogue, if you read this book, which, you know, fine, taste, I still gave it 3 stars because it was, I mean, fairly interesting, and she's a good writer, sort of. If you do read it, skip the epilogue. Trust me, you don't need to read that crap. You really don't. So yeah, just don't read the epilogue. It adds nothing. It adds nothing, and just made me go, what? Okay. So anyway, that was my 3 stars, and also why I have no idea how to classify this book. Okay, Lone Women by Victor Lavelle. This was an odd book, and the one I gave 4 stars to, actually. So Adelaide is living in California with her parents. She is 31 years old and doesn't have a husband or a family outside of her parents. It's her and her parents. And at the beginning of the story, how we meet Adelaide is her parents are in their bedroom and they're dead. And she's saying goodbye to them as she's dousing the house with gasoline. And before she leaves, she sets the house on fire. And in tow, when she leaves, she has this very heavy steamer trunk. And there's something in this steamer trunk that is her responsibility to take care of, but we don't know what it is. So she's hauling all of this. So she's running away, and it was, again, late 1800s. And she had been reading newspaper articles about how in Montana, because of the way that Montana worded their homesteading act, was that any person who would get a claim and improve upon it for 3 years would then own the claim, any person. So she'd read a newspaper article about how a woman had gone and gotten a claim and ended up with a farm in Montana. And there was it just said person. So it could be black, it could be white, it could be men, it could be women. It was a loophole. And so Adelaide decided that she was going to go. That's what she was going to do. So it kind of follows her on her trip a little bit to the first part, pulling this steamer trunk in tow. And I expected there to be a lot more racism in this book than there was. There was some, but not a whole lot. But anyway, it was okay. So she gets to Montana. She gets to Big Sandy, Montana, and that's the closest town to where her claim is. And so she hires a wagon, and it turns out this wagon, Mr. Olson, had also been hired by this family called the Mudge family. And it was a mom with 4 blind sons.
All 4 of them are
All
blind?
4 of them are blind, but, you know, pretty capable, apparently. They had been blind, and she had always taught them how to, you know, be self-sufficient and things like that. So, story was they were going to a claim too. Well, they got caught in some weather and they couldn't make it to the claims before dark. So they went on this kind of abandoned town, and Mr. Olson left them, his wagon got stuck. So he left his passengers at this abandoned hotel to spend the night while he got the wagon out. And part of the reason the wagon got stuck was because Adelaide's trunk is so heavy. Okay, so in the morning, and the Mudges are weird. They're just like, Mrs. Mudge is acting very strange towards Adelaide.
Okay.
Anyway, in the morning, Adelaide goes out and Mr. Olson is outside, got a fire going with some breakfast. He offers her breakfast and she looks over and her trunk is in the wagon, but the lock is open. And she goes over there and says it looks like it's been picked and the Mudges have disappeared. And so we get our first hint that whenever the trunk is opened, bad things happen. So that's the mystery of what is in that trunk, and that Adelaide is its keeper, whatever it is. So we follow Adelaide as she gets to her claim and kind of moves in, and basically she's completely ill-prepared for doing this. And this is like in, I think, October. So winter's coming on and she has nothing.
Okay.
So we kind of come to meet some of the neighbors that come to, you know. And she meets this man named Matthew, and who is white, by the way. She's like, there's 2 black women in this kind of community, and you rarely ever, she had never yet met the other one. So she was meeting all of these white people who really didn't seem to have any issues with a black woman at all. So
in
again,
the late 1800s.
yeah, again, but I think it was portrayed as we got bigger things to worry about, kind of thing. So she meets this man and they kind of have a thing, but then he goes and opens her trunk.
No, Matthew, no.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna say what happened, but that starts to lead into Adelaide's secrets coming out. And so we find out what's in the trunk. We find out what happened to her parents and how Adelaide has to deal with this. And I will say, I should have seen what was coming in the trunk, but I didn't. This one got me. I should have seen it, but I didn't. Which makes me, because of what it is, it makes me want to classify this book as magical realism. Because there's a lot of symbolism in this. So anyway, the reason it didn't get 5 stars from me is that I really wish, Adelaide was supposed to be improving upon this claim so she could keep it. And yet there was like nothing. It never showed her doing anything. She was like so not prepared for anything. And yet she was continuing to like rely on other people's charity to get her by. She was running out of money. She wasn't preparing herself. So it just seemed like she ought to have been a little more proactive. She was very passive in that way. But there is somewhat of an element of found family in here because we meet the other black woman in the community. And there is a Chinese woman in the community who was actually born in Montana, but from immigrant parents.
Gotcha.
And then this other woman and her son, which there's also a mystery there, who also have a claim. And so these women kind of together are the lone women because they're on their own out in Montana. So there's one mystery with Grace, who is the woman with the son, that is just never explained. And so that was kind of like...
Okay,
disappointing, yeah. And it's just kind of left to dangle. So there's that. But as the book progresses, it's really interesting to watch some of the townspeople that, like there's this Mrs. Reed who's like the town matron kind of thing. And so they make a big deal about how she's always at the train station when it comes in every day, greeting new people, greeting new residents. She's very much the, town queen.
Interesting.
So she seems like a very friendly character at first, and then to watch how things change over time, more and more of it's never really overt, but there's more and more racism makes its way in, but still not as much as I would think. But for instance, one of the minority characters has a job that they're like self-employed. They have a contract with the hotel. But then a white woman and her son, a widow, moved to town to open a business to do what this woman is contracting to do. And so all of a sudden, Mrs. Reed is like completely throwing her weight behind this woman, Mrs. Stanley, that just moved to town, because we have to take care of our own, kind of thing. So the racism trickles in there. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it's just the journey, Adelaide's journey mainly. There is some romance in this, not with Adelaide so much, but with some of the side characters. Again, some of the side characters aren't really well developed, but again, with Adelaide's story and how that kind of turns out, and you find out what's in the trunk and what happened to her parents, and then how she has to deal with this, and how she kind of tries to hide from it for a while, and you know, her own kind of guilt comes out, in many forms of guilt comes out. But there's still just things that just don't get addressed. Like, they get brought up, but yet they don't go anywhere. And I think those things were brought up in order to do character development, like to show you who these characters were, but it didn't work for me. The ending, well, it took me by surprise, that's for sure. Yeah. So this one's kind of classified as horror in some places, and if the horror aspects are because of gruesome murders, then yeah, it's horror. But horrific elements, I wouldn't call it horror. I don't think it's a thriller. It's not really a mystery either. I mean, there's mystery elements, but I wouldn't call it. It's not like there was an investigation or anything like that. I mean, everybody but the reader knows what's going on. You know, the reader has to find out. So it's not that. So I don't really know. Again, it's historical, but I don't know. And this was a real thing too. Like, this was a real thing in Montana. Oh. Yeah. There really was a loophole in their homesteading act, and that women took advantage of. It was one of the few states that women could go and own property at that time. And they took advantage of it. So that was a real thing. So that was interesting. But the end was definitely, there's a vengeance story here. And they take revenge. Boy, howdy. Nice. So anyway, that's where I landed out of 4, because I thought it was a really interesting story. He wrote it very well. Adelaide's voice in this book is so cool. I mean, I love the way that she thought about things, and how she would think things that we all think, but we don't admit to thinking. And she would think something, and then it would say, that's probably bad to think, but there it is. And so it was kind of cool. I mean, I liked her character, so it was really neat. And I liked the cultural elements too of some of the different characters. It was pretty neat. So that's what landed me at 4. And I think that's it. I probably went on way too long again.
That's it. That was our May reading stats and
stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I'm really hoping that I can do better in June, because this was just really sad.
But you know what's really sad? Neither one of us read the May book club yet. Because we knew we were going to do book club.
Oh no.
For another week.
I wait to read the book club book until like the week.
I do too.
Because I will forget.
Mm-hmm. And if you haven't seen it before, normally this Sunday, when you're watching this today, we would be doing our live book club discussion. But because we're both very busy on Sunday, we can't do it. So that's why you're getting our stats on the first Sunday instead of the second. And we will probably do this one
On the
next
second
week.
Sunday?
Our book club. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, on the 11th, I think. That's the next Sunday.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing that. So you still have time. We are reading Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. So there's still plenty of time. Again, cover, isn't that beautiful? There's still plenty of time to join us reading this, and a week from now when you're watching this, not a little over a week for me, but we will be having a live discussion on Sunday, June 11th at 3-ish.
3-ish. Yep. If you guys enjoyed watching this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, go on down below the video and hit that little red subscribe button. Join the Everyday Adventure family so you can see our book videos every Sunday around 3-ish o'clock.
Yeah. Mostly.
Yeah. We do our best. We do our best.
And if you came here for the book stuff, you can go to Amy's channel and see more book stuff. If you're cool with book stuff, but you kind of like other stuff better, you can still go to Amy's channel and find all kinds of things, shopping hauls, thrifting hauls, fashion, home decor. She has a whole nother channel for the paranormal stuff. That's not on there anymore. Ghost hunting, if you like that, you can, I'm sure she'll have a link down there. But right now she's doing a whole series on deep cleaning her whole house. And the most recent one was cleaning her office. And she did a very good job. It looks really good. So you can watch all of that. She also has much more content on her blog that you can go to as well. And that includes like cooking and dining out, Foodie Fridays.
Yeah, restaurant
and
reviews.
Netflix recommendations. And so all kinds of stuff. So there is literally something for everybody, and everybody should like all her somethings because it's really interesting stuff. So there you go. And we are both on Instagram. Links down there.
Yes. So anyway, I think that that's going to do it for us today after our long ending spiels. And yeah, but like I said, we hope that you guys enjoyed watching this video, and we'll see you next Sunday, hopefully, for our live stream. I'm Amy.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are
the Everyday Epic.
See y'all in the next one.
Bye.